Chapters 1 and 2 of Book 8 of Les Misérables, Volume 3 by Victor Hugo. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Bruce Peary. Les Misérables, Volume 3 by Victor Hugo. Translated by Isabel, Florence, HAPGOOD. Book 8. The Wicked Poor Man. Chapter 1. Marius, while seeking a girl in a bonnet, encounters a man in a cap. Summer passed, then the autumn. Winter came. Neither Monsieur Leblanc nor the young girl had again set foot in the Luxembourg garden. Thenceforth Marius had but one thought, to gaze once more on that sweet and adorable face. He sought constantly, he sought everywhere, he found nothing. He was no longer Marius, the enthusiastic dreamer, the firm, resolute, ardent man, the bold defier of fate, the brain which erected future on future, the young spirit encumbered with plans, with projects, with pride, with ideas and wishes. He was a lost dog. He fell into a black melancholy. All was over. Work disgusted him. Walking tired him. Vast nature, formerly so filled with forms, lights, voices, counsels, perspectives, horizons, teachings, now lay empty before him. It seemed to him that everything had disappeared. He thought incessantly, for he could not do otherwise, but he no longer took pleasure in his thoughts. To everything that they proposed to him in a whisper, he replied in his darkness, "What is the use?" He heaped 100 reproaches on himself. Why did I follow her? I was so happy at the mere sight of her. She looked at me. Was not that immense? She had the air of loving me. Was not that everything? I wished to have what? There was nothing after that. I have been absurd. It is my own fault, etc., etc. Courfeyrac, to whom he confided nothing, it was his nature, but who made some little guess at everything, that was his nature, had begun by congratulating him on being in love, though he was amazed at it. Then, seeing Marius fall into this melancholy state, he ended by saying to him, "I see that you have been simply an animal. Here, come to the chaumière." Once, having confidence in a fine September sun, Marius had allowed himself to be taken to the ball at Sceaux by Courfeyrac, Bossuet, and Grantaire, hoping, what a dream, that he might perhaps find her there. Of course, he did not see the one he sought. "But this is the place, all the same, where all lost women are found," grumbled Grantaire in an aside. Marius left his friends at the ball, and returned home on foot, alone, through the night. Weary, feverish, with sad and troubled eyes, stunned by the noise and dust of the merry wagons filled with singing creatures on their way home from the feast, which passed close to him as he, in his discouragement, breathed in the acrid scent of the walnut trees along the road in order to refresh his head. He took to living more and more alone, utterly overwhelmed, wholly given up to his inward anguish, going and coming in his pain like the wolf in the trap, seeking the absent one everywhere, stupefied by love. On another occasion he had an encounter which produced on him a singular effect. He met, in the narrow streets in the vicinity of the Boulevard des Invalides, a man dressed like a working-man and wearing a cap with a long visor, which allowed a glimpse of locks of very white hair. Marius was struck with the beauty of this white hair, and scrutinized the man, who was walking slowly and as though absorbed in painful meditation. Strange to say, he thought that he recognized Monsieur Leblanc. The hair was the same, also the profile, so far as the cap permitted a view of it, the mien identical, only more depressed. But why these working-man's clothes? What was the meaning of this? What signified that disguise? Marius was greatly astonished. When he recovered himself, his first impulse was to follow the man. Who knows whether he did not hold at last the clue which he was seeking? In any case, he must see the man near at hand, and clear up the mystery. But the idea occurred to him too late. The man was no longer there. He had turned into some little side street, and Marius could not find him. This encounter occupied his mind for 3 days, and then was effaced. After all, he said to himself, it was probably only a resemblance. Chapter 2. Treasure Trove. Marius had not left the Gorbeau house. He paid no attention to any one there. At that epoch, to tell the truth, there were no other inhabitants in the house except himself and those Jondrettes whose rent he had once paid, without, moreover, ever having spoken to either father, mother, or daughters. The other lodgers had moved away, or had died, or had been turned out in default of payment. One day during that winter the sun had shown itself a little in the afternoon, but it was the 2nd of February, that ancient Candlemas day whose treacherous sun, the precursor of a 6 weeks' cold spell, inspired Mathieu Lensberg with these 2 lines, which have with justice remained classic: Qu'il luise ou qu'il luiserne, l'ours rentre dans sa caverne. Footnote: whether the sun shines brightly or dim, the bear returns to his cave. End of footnote. Marius had just emerged from his. Night was falling. It was the hour for his dinner, for he had been obliged to take to dining again, alas, O infirmities of ideal passions! He had just crossed his threshold where Ma'am Bougon was sweeping at the moment, as she uttered this memorable monologue: "What is there that is cheap now? Everything is dear. There is nothing in the world that is cheap except trouble. You can get that for nothing, the trouble of the world." Marius slowly ascended the boulevard towards the barrier in order to reach the Rue Saint-Jacques. He was walking along with drooping head. All at once he felt some one elbow him in the dusk. He wheeled round and saw 2 young girls clad in rags, the one tall and slim, the other a little shorter, who were passing rapidly, all out of breath, in terror, and with the appearance of fleeing. They had been coming to meet him, had not seen him, and had jostled him as they passed. Through the twilight Marius could distinguish their livid faces, their wild heads, their dishevelled hair, their hideous bonnets, their ragged petticoats, and their bare feet. They were talking as they ran. The taller said in a very low voice, "The bobbies have come. They came near nabbing me at the half-circle." The other answered, "I saw them. I bolted, bolted, bolted." Through this repulsive slang, Marius understood that gendarmes or the police had come near apprehending these 2 children, and that the latter had escaped. They plunged among the trees of the boulevard behind him, and there created for a few minutes in the gloom a sort of vague white spot, then disappeared. Marius had halted for a moment. He was about to pursue his way when his eye lighted on a little grayish package lying on the ground at his feet. He stooped and picked it up. It was a sort of envelope which appeared to contain papers. "Good," he said to himself, "those unhappy girls dropped it." He retraced his steps. He called. He did not find them. He reflected that they must already be far away, put the package in his pocket, and went off to dine. On the way he saw in an alley of the Rue Mouffetard a child's coffin covered with a black cloth, resting on 3 chairs and illuminated by a candle. The 2 girls of the twilight recurred to his mind. Poor mothers, he thought. There is one thing sadder than to see one's children die. It is to see them leading an evil life. Then those shadows, which had varied his melancholy, vanished from his thoughts, and he fell back once more into his habitual preoccupations. He fell to thinking once more of his 6 months of love and happiness in the open air and the broad daylight, beneath the beautiful trees of Luxembourg. "How gloomy my life has become," he said to himself. "Young girls are always appearing to me, only formerly they were angels, and now they are ghouls." End of Book 8, Chapters 1 and 2.